Hello. I hear someone has unmuted themselves. Does that mean that they have a question? Okay, so alrighty, it is now 1:03 Pacific time, so this is going to start the Q&A session for web clients today, and so far no one has popped up with any specific questions. So while we're waiting for anybody to come up with a question, I will just go ahead and show some basic functionality of the web client. From the people I see in attendance, it's probably nothing new, but maybe along the way we'll come up with something that you haven't seen before. So, of course, you have your basic windows up at the top, which everybody should be familiar with for the most part. Um, One that you probably don't look at all that often is under admin. So when you're in another section of the web client and you want to get to the reports, you don't have to go to the home and then reports. You can go to administration and reports. They go to the same place, but that way, you can skip a step if that's been how you've been navigating it. Because I know that my default is, oh, it's on the main splash page. That's all I need to think about is to get them to them that way. Most of you guys won't be messing with most of this under the admin. However, under workstation, there are some sections that may be useful for you. For instance, if you need to disable the sounds across your web client, you can do so here. You can also test the different sounds to find out what they sound like. Make sure the volume is set on your system to an appropriate level so it doesn't, blow out your eardrums or anything. You can also set your default search library and preferred library here to whatever you want it to be. So most of you, it will have, whatever branch you're working out of. If you are working across different branches, you could set it, at each one, or depending on, maybe you just want to do it at the, the level up. So under here, we have the search default pane, which if you do a lot of like ISBN and other numeric searches, you may get tired of going to search, catalog, and then having to drill down from advanced to numeric. If that's the case, you can set that. Well, you can set any of these, although I wouldn't recommend expert search. So by default, it goes to advanced search. That is what is set here as default, even though it's not populated. Another thing is if you do work in multiple branches, you can add different locations here under new workstation. Most of you probably already know this, that need it. And then you can switch which one you're using. So you put the name of your computer, register, and then it'll add it as a drop down. Let's see, printer settings. This section only works if you have Hatch installed. If you don't worry about it. Printer templates are under here. This is where you would go to load import, to import templates like the ones that Beth sent out earlier that had additional things in the templates. Also, this is where you would export your templates if you've made any customizations, and then just save it to a location that you are familiar with. So I would go open the show in folder, and of course it's not on that screen. And so this goes to your downloads, and then just like name it like with the date or what it is, and perhaps move it to a folder that you're familiar with so you can find it when you need it.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Question, you mentioned Hatch, and I'm just curious. I know that in future versions of the web client, we aren't going to need to use Hatch for as many things. We haven't really been able to use it for much where we are. My question is, what things will still be required, or for what things will Hatch still be required in the future?
My
Does that make sense?
understanding is that with 3.3 and above, it's mostly going away. Beth can correct me on that, but as far as I'm aware, it's going away and is only needed in 3.2 and under. So that means come January, hopefully we shouldn't be needing it. In which case, these items should then be available for everybody. So all the different receipt and label printer settings and all that stuff, which would also open up down here where we've got this should, I need to pull up the window of what that looks like under 3.4. I don't remember off the top of my head what it looks like, but I assume that the settings are still similar but different. So, so yes, the answer is yes, it shouldn't be needed as much. I remember seeing that it was still implemented in some cases for multiple printers, but I think for the most part, everything has been converted over because with 3.3 and above, it's going to, instead of storing your settings locally, it's supposed to store it on the server, which will eliminate a lot of the headaches that we've been having. So I think that's everything on that.
Hey, John, this
Yeah,
is Anna. I have a question. Can you go back to the print templates
of
page
course.
that you were on? So does it, because it looks like, right, so there's a single, there's the bills current. So if you click on export customize templates, does that only save that one that's
Nope.
in that pull down menu? So you would have to go and export each one individually. There's no way
No.
to
No, it
like
does the
export them.
whole thing.
Oh, okay. Okay. So regardless of what is in that little box, it'll do the
Yes.
whole thing.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Let's see. There was something else I was. Oh, I don't know if this is useful to anybody, but if you're having an issue with the client, there is a test under here which tests your latency to show what your web connection is like for the client. So if you're getting, I mean, these are pretty average numbers. They should be anywhere between, well, hopefully they should be well under 100 milliseconds. If you're running into 1,000 milliseconds, in other words, like a second or greater, you may be having some major internet issues. I would say anything over 100 milliseconds, you might be starting to have issues. But so anyway, it's a good little test to have knowledge of if you ever need it. Let's see, what else did I? Sorry, just going over my notes. Does anybody have any other questions before I proceed?
So just to be clear on that last test that you showed, that is that an indication of latency
For
for
the
us
internet connection.
locally, or is that also taking into account the server side latency? So does it indicate a problem with my local machine or the server
That's
or
your
both?
that's your connection to the server.
Okay.
So you could run something like speedtest.net to see what your actual internet connection looks like, and if there's a big discrepancy between the connection on here, the ping rate, and because this just tests to the regular, should be to Google or their servers. And so like I'm getting this the pretty constant 8 here. So it was significantly slower at 40 to the server, but it's still fast as far as the internet's concerned, as far as your computer's concerned. So if you're getting that way between those two, you can kind of isolate if it's your internet connection or if it's the connection to the server.
Okay, so if, say it's the connection to the server and it's not our local internet,
Mm-hmm.
what would we see in the test results that you did through the web client? What would we see?
Well, it would
Like,
be.
would we see it wouldn't go through, or we would
It
see high
might.
speeds, we would see low speeds,
You would see these numbers right here would be really high,
Mhm,
and it would probably take a long time for each line to complete.
mhm.
So it's going to be a slow process. You'd also be starting to see lag with the pages loading correctly. So, and whenever that happens, just shoot me an email and I will check the servers and see if the services need restarted or anything. But it's kind of an indicator.
So if we tested our own internet and got normal numbers, and then we did this test and got slow numbers, we could be pretty assured that it's not
Mm-hmm.
our own internet connection.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So, and
John,
oh, yeah.
so I wanted to let folks know that some speed issues have been addressed in 3.4. So problems that we've been experiencing with the web client being slow, like on check-in and things like that, have been addressed with the future upgrade.
Right, and the way it handles Apache requests is completely different. So the issue that we've been having with WebSockets should not be the case going forward, which has been what's been forcing me to restart services on a semi-regular basis. Beth, did you want to handle the offline circ question in chat about on the 15th of January when we do the update?
I didn't see the chat message, but I am going to be doing a session specifically on offline, and we have to use the web client offline, not the desktop web client. Sorry, not the desktop offline, because the desktop client's going away with the upgrade, and so we want to be able to transfer the files into our web version. So we need to use the web client.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oh, go ahead.
And once you have logged into the web client at any time, the system will recognize when the server is offline, and it will automatically bring up the offline client for you to use within the web browser.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions about that?
John, I had a different question.
Okay.
Just going back to templates. If we are already using the web client and we already have created different templates in the web client, will all of that get imported over to the upgrade, or will we have to redo all of our templates on the 15th?
My understanding is that as long as you export them and import them back in, that everything should be fine. Is that?
Oh, but we will still be responsible for exporting them and importing them ourselves. They won't automatically.
I think well, my understanding was that it's supposed to take what's locally saved, and the first time you log in, it's supposed to upload it to the server. Is that your understanding as well, Beth?
That is my understanding. I think as a precaution, it wouldn't hurt to export them,
Right.
but I believe that whatever we have customized should come over to the upgrade.
So because I imagine with the upgrade then on the 15th, we will no longer have access to point 2, so we'll need to export all of our templates prior to that so that we'll have the backup for the 15th just in case.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And you'll want to make sure that your templates are working, because if you're using the desktop version versus the web client, you'll want to make sure that they all work in the web client beforehand. So Beth had asked me just to show the basics of like opening extra windows. So one thing that I was doing up here, I don't know if anybody noticed, was you can at any time from any of these windows you can right click and do open new tab, like I did here to get this window open. And so that works with pretty much anything in the client. For some reason, is that my connection? There we go. Okay. So under the OPAC version, you will see, your formats and additions, like we were talking about the mentors group yesterday. You can view and edit the barcodes. So you can do the same thing here with new tab. And see the circ history and all this stuff. You can also go to the list view, which will give you different options in the drop down than you have in the detail view. Mostly the same, but there are a few differences. Let's see. One thing that I've noticed, which is kind of odd, is that if you do this to get to the, so right here, instead of clicking on this, I opened it in a separate window, which pulls up the OPAC page. However, if you look, you're missing stuff at the top, and I'm not sure why. So, because if you go here, you then have what you should have, which is your mark edit, flat text or not, and your mark view, holds, monograph parts, all that stuff. Another thing to remember is these are clickable, which will then reference the authority links, or let's see, there was another one I was going to pull up. I think it was this one. I had the other link on it. Which one was it? It was... I think I have the... I do. I have the ID right here. So just a sec. Okay, that must have been a different record I was looking at. Might have been this one. Apologize. I had two main records I was looking at that are completely different. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. So under the 007 physical characteristics wizard, if you follow this blue link, you'll get to see how it breaks down and if it matches the correct material type, things of that nature. Another thing that catalogers will want is I've already attached it to my taskbar at the bottom, but the character map, that is in lieu of the pop-up that was in the desktop client, which of course popped up on the other screen. Okay, so this gives you all of your different symbols and everything plus a whole ton of ones that we didn't have access to in the other pop-up because they weren't used frequently enough in order for us to add them. So all your different diacritics and things of that nature. But if you want to, you can just come down here and if it wasn't already pinned, it would say pinned to taskbar, and that would give you a link down here so that you don't have to search for it. Let's see. That's basically everything I had written down as just basics to walk people through. Are there any other questions that anybody has?
John, Anna again, sorry.
No,
So I've noticed that as well. Sometimes when you click and open up a record in another tab, then it'll be the OPAC view instead of. And is that going to be resolved with the new version, or is that just kind of?
I hope so. I haven't had a chance to actually play with 3.4 yet. That's what I'm working on, setting up a test version so I can run through it all beforehand so we can answer all those questions. I've got it 95% there. It's just I have to figure out the last little bugs of why it's not working, and then I can answer those questions with certainty. Unless Beth has already... There's another 3.4 out there that you can use for test, and I haven't actually had a chance to look at that. Have you had a chance to look at that, Beth?
I have not, but intended to do that before our sessions next week.
Okay.
If we have time today, we could go out to that server. Obviously, it doesn't have the same kind of elements. It's a much more abbreviated catalog, but we could test the same, I guess, the same functionality that we're trying to do here if we recognize what link we're clicking on that gives us just the OPAC view versus the staff client, and see if it happens in 3.4. I know that those are things that that's the type of things that they're working on and have made improvements from our version to 3.4. I just don't know whether this specific one has been addressed.
And I'm trying to remember the URL off the top of my head, and I know you sent it to me, but I don't see it. Do you remember who was hosting that?
Actually, it would be on the upgrade page on sagelib.org, John.
Okay. So I'm doing this on another screen, so you don't have to watch me in case I do typos and things of that nature. There it is. Okay, so it is admin demo 123, and if anybody was
Did we lose more than just, yeah, I was going to say, did we lose a screen too?
I can see the screen, but yeah, I don't know that. Okay, he sent me a chat message correcting the situation. So it'll be just a few seconds or a couple minutes. Let's put it that way. John, not yet. One of the things about this demo is it is not scaled for a lot of use simultaneously. So it was recommended to me that we not use it as a training server. Certainly we can get in and look at things, but I probably won't be using this server for training.
Can you hear me?
Hmm.
Okay, just a sec. Test. Test, test.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay! Okay, sorry about that. I feel embarrassed. So when I plugged my laptop into my surge protector, I didn't use the normal one I use, and I didn't check to see if the power was on. So the battery on my computer went out. So I feel silly. Okay, so here we are. I'm not sure what's in the sample catalog, so can we do just a general search on, say, like audiobooks? Formats, reference. Just out of curiosity, will that work? Yes. Okay, so there's one. So here's how we test that, and I do not see that fixed. So it looks like it's pulling just the bottom section of the page when we do that, which is kind of odd. So I wonder if there is another way of doing that. I mean, of course, if you just open it and then you can go from there. That's the only spot where I've seen it dropping this part. Because normally if you do like this, it pulls everything up that you need it to pull up. So I'm not sure why it's pulling only part of the page. But at least this test one is still doing that. So we may need to flag that as a concern and see if they can fix it.
John, I had a question, and I think it may have the same answer as the last one that Anna asked, and if so, that's fine. But
Okay.
I was curious about the auto refreshing after, creating patron records or creating item records or importing, and just I know that's been a source of frustration for folks just because they end up having to auto refresh. Are there some things that are now slated to auto refresh in the new version? Do we know yet?
Go ahead, Beth.
Yes, there are some things. I don't have a list of them specifically, but I could search for that.
Yeah, I remember seeing notes about it. I just don't remember which ones. Yeah, that would be under the improvements and everything. But anyway, I was going to add, if anybody was looking for this, Beth had sent this out earlier. This is the upgrade page that she was referencing. So it's just kind of got basic FAQs, the link that right there that I'm using, and things of that nature. So and also answer some of the basic questions about offline version, what to do while we're doing that. Sorry, I kind of got off my path when my computer shut down for a second. Where does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
Sorry, it's me again.
It's fine.
So I haven't really looked at, and I don't know if anybody else has, the web client version of the offline that we'll need to use on January 15th. Is that on that new demo page? Is there a way to look at it and see the differences between that and the other offline client that we're used to?
Should be. I know Beth was going to focus an entire session just on the offline client.
Oh, okay. Well, that can wait till then.
But it looks very similar so far. Let's see. Anything else? Because I know we're at half an hour, so I didn't know if we wanted to wrap it up or if there were any other questions or concerns, comments.
I think that it would be good for folks to go ahead and, as they think of questions, go ahead and send an email to John and I,
Definitely.
so that we know to focus on those particular things in the upcoming sessions. And also, I'm putting together short tutorials, and so knowing what folks need additional instruction on is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then so the circulation one will be on the 18th at 10 a.m. There will be a cataloging one at 10 a.m. on the 20th, and then the offline version is going to be on the 8th at 1 p.m.
And the reason I scheduled the offline one closer to the upgrade is I wanted to have the details kind of fresher in our mind before we're going to use it in operation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I'll go ahead and end the recording and end the call. So thank you, everybody who joined us. I appreciate it, and for all the questions and comments. And I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day and weekend.
Thanks, John and Beth.
Mm-hmm.